Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
We have Brian Bolland in the house today. We're going through dozens of pages from his tenure at 2000 AD, working on Judge Dredd in particular. Going to get to ask him all the questions that we've always wanted to ask about his work on Judge Dredd. Brian, thank you so much for joining us again, sir.
Thanks for having me again.
And I do want to, we did the Killing Joke a couple of weeks back. And I do want to make mention that, we suggested that maybe it was pen and ink art that was done, but you're a brush guy when it comes to inking, correct?
Yeah. I never used a pen. Everything I drew, everything that you can see here, was drawn with I think it was called a Series 6 number 3 Winsor & Newton brush. All except for the straight lines, which I would have used a repeatograph and a straight ruler of some sort. I would imagine that the curve of the top of I think it's called Lawgiver or something, the gun would have been done with a template of some sort, right, with a repeatograph. But all the line work, all the rest of the line work is done with a brush.
That is unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Yeah, wow.
And I understand that Dick Giordano inked with a brush too. His work always looked very penny, really, but I believe he worked with a brush.
Yeah, that is wild, because you think about the stuff he did with Neil Adams and some of that fuss inside the knees and thing, basically hatching.
Did Neil use a pen for his inking, do you think?
I think he did. I think he used all sorts of tools.
Yeah, brushes, markers.
Did you ever interview Neil?
We did not. That makes me super sad. But I got to see him draw a couple of times at conventions and things, and it's a real wild approach where he's just putting marks all over the paper.
Oh,
you saw it?
It's so loose, isn't it? Yeah. Yes, I know his work very well. I followed his work, ever since I was 19, I guess.
Yeah.
Younger, in fact. Wonderfully sort of anarchic. That's the word I'm looking for, wasn't it? Terrific to look at.
I saw him draw once at Heroes Con, and he would draw a couple of marks at this part of the paper, a couple of marks up there, a couple over here, and then just slowly you would see a Batman materialize. Like the marks down here would start to connect up here. Yeah, it was very different than how they teach you in little art books and things, with drawing eggs and cylinders and stuff.
Yes. I always start with the left eye and then work my way out.
Is that true?
Well, the right eye, as we're looking at it, but I always start with that one.
Interesting. This was a piece that I was very excited to see in this book, and it's a piece that I actually asked you about when we interviewed you the first time around, because of this stipple approach fascinated me whenever I would see it in old, online and places like that. And to see you use that, especially drawing at this big size, like that, go look at Drew Friedman's artwork. That could become a very laborious thing, but you seem to get from dark to light pretty.
I really like Drew Friedman's stipple work. If anything, I liked it more than his painted work. But he's a very good artist. Frank Bellamy was a very well-liked British artist, going all the way back into the 50s with the Eagle comic, and he used the stipple effect like that. And I guess I must have just tried it just the once. It was my very first piece of British comic art. No, would it have been? I think it pretty much was my very first piece of British comic art. And so I wanted to impress, I guess, by trying something, but I didn't, and I have the artwork here, you see.
Oh, that's amazing.
And I've got, my image is not going in like a mirror image, so it's difficult to know whether left or right, but can you see that?
Yes, sir. That begs a question. Do you recall how many of those Powerman pages you might have drawn?
Oh, well, I reckon it was getting up towards 300.
Wow.
But we didn't get any of the artwork back at all. We got paid for them about £17 a page, something like that. And we never saw the artwork. I don't think anyone's ever seen the artwork to Powerman. It is.
What were the procedures with the 2000 AD artwork? Would they hang on to those pages?
Well, the procedure with that was that IPC or Fleetway, I can't remember what they were at the time, the policy was not to return the artwork. at all. So they had these vast collections of bits of artwork in what they call the vaults, and they didn't return any. Well, there is a kind of story there, because eventually they decided there was so much of this stuff that they had to think about returning it to the artists. And and so we do get some back.
I think I remember reading somewhere, we might have asked you, like at some point they asked you to like buy it back or something. It had some sort of administrative fee.
Well, I can't quite remember what their motive and why they were worried about the artist getting the artwork back. But eventually, when they decided to return it, they said, "Well, that's great, but the artist must pay to have transparencies made of each of the pages, each page they have returned to them." And not only that, but we actually had to tell them which was our pages that we wanted returned. So it was quite a laborious business of cataloguing what issue, what page in what issue was my page that needed to be returned, and then the business of getting transparencies made. I don't know whether that was ever done. Certainly not by me. So, and in the end, over 100 pages that should have come back to me had gone missing.
I was going to ask that. Did any of those black market pages show up in this book?
That's a very good question. The pages that were returned to me went through Forbidden Planet, the shop in London, and to show that they were authentically acquired, returned to me, I signed my name, I believe, in red ink. Now, I can't see what colour those signatures are. Is that black?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, but if it's got my signature on it, then it must have been legit.
And it does look like your hand.
Yeah, I don't know really. I do have a list somewhere, I haven't got it here, of the pages that were squirreled away by other people. Yeah, so I couldn't tell you what's... I mean, that one's definitely one of mine, one that was returned to me.
Brian, were the scripts comparable to like Alan Moore's script for Killing Joke? You know, we have in the in publication, so we can see it. Were the scripts for these stories similar, like full script?
Well, I mean, there's never been anything as thorough as Alan's scripts, but it is all done full script. John Wagner or whoever was writing it was giving me full script. We didn't do it the Marvel way. But since we don't have the script here, it's going to be difficult for me to tell you whether I adhered closely to the instructions or not. I can't imagine that I decided on my own to have that kind of buzzsaw thing chopping its way through that vehicle. That would have been John Wagner or whoever wrote that.
Brian,
I remember in that particular. You see, the thing is, I think the pages in this book are not in story order, are they? Because not all of them have been found.
Right.
I'm not sure whether you can go page by page and pick up a story, but I do remember that in the script it did say that what was that vehicle called? I can't remember what it was called. I actually had the toy of that vehicle. They gave me one so that I knew what it looked like from all angles. I don't know what's happened to it. But in the script, I do remember it saying that it sort of crawled up with its crawler tracks, or whatever you call them, up the faces of the Mount Rushmore presidents. And I thought, how could he possibly do that? So I just had to do it anyway, you know, the thing going up an almost vertical surface. I do remember that.
I see you're using Strathmore 500. I don't suppose that the 2000 AD offices supplied you with that. Yeah, I see a little stamp here. That's like the sort of...
Do you know something? This is going to be a very patchy interview, because I really can't even remember whether I acquired the paper myself or whether they supplied it.
Right.
I mean, if I said they didn't, I could be slandering them.
I say that because historically, certainly in American comics, you'll see people on record like Bernie Wrightson, who said that like the blue line paper at DC was just 2 steps above toilet paper, and then they made Dick Giordano like try it, and he was like, "Oh fuck that! Like we're going to change paper stocks." And Strathmore 500, for the people at home, that's the best paper that's the best Bristol you can get. So it's a cheeky joke, supposing that the publisher would actually go for the best and not
right.
Well, I don't know whether you can see this. Where's the camera on this thing? But the back of this bit of artwork, I'm pretty certain I would have bought this myself because it says CS10. There's a lot of very fancy writing on there, but I suspect I would have bought this stuff myself. Because I think it was quite a novel thing when I got to DC, and they were actually sending me DC paper to draw on. So I'm pretty certain I bought this stuff myself. Later pages were drawn on kind of floppy paper like this.
Right.
Is that the right way up? This is very weird because it's going not in. That is actually an inserted page into one of the Titan editions.
I see. When
the pages were out of sequence, I think they needed to start a story on the right page, so I added a couple of extra pages just to. And I don't think it made it into your book, that one.
Yeah, that's too bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
Would they give you some leeway? Did they know your speed of production? And 2000 AD, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's a weekly magazine. So would they say that, okay, we know Brian Bolland's speed. It's going to take him a little while. We're going to give him a story that we expect maybe a month in advance, 2 months in advance, anything like that? Or were you expected to turn a Judge Dredd story around pretty rapidly?
They did know I was slow. They knew I was much slower than. Well, Carlos could do a page a day easily.
Yeah.
Mick McMahon was faster than me, and gradually, as I sort of got myself more into the position of being a Judge Dredd artist, they did realise that they were going to have to give me just the amount of time that I required, especially when it came to the Dark Judges. They gave me. They actually. Timed it so that Carlos's epic Apocalypse War didn't start until after my run on the Dark Judges was completed. I think they gave me a few weeks to do that. I think there was about 30 pages of that.
Amazing.
What have we got here?
I think we're looking at that toy again. That little digger machine.
Oh yeah, it had a name, and I don't know whether it's probably not called that on this page, is it? But. That was fun. I'm not very good at vehicles, actually. I have to admit that.
Killdozer, Raider.
The Killdozer. Could it be that?
Killdozer was a comic in
It's
Battle Action.
It was, yeah.
In a caption on that previous page.
Yeah.
What was this little pill character called?
Yeah, he's the mascot for Alka-Seltzer here in the States.
Alka-Seltzer, yes, that's right.
And that's what all this is. We got the Jolly Green Giant. These pages did not come to America in the Eagle comic series that came to the States because of all the mascot stuff. Colonel Sanders. Colonel Sanders might have been alive.
Yeah.
At the time.
Yes.
Michelin Man.
Well, you know that the Green Giant Company attempted to sue them for that. There was a legal tussle over the Green Giant sweet corn stuff, and. I think the Green Giant Company were given a free ad in 2000 AD at some point. And these pages were never reprinted in the later editions, were they? Until quite recently.
Was all the lettering pasted up? Or would that be a consequence of you taking your time and then they have to like rush?
No, that's just the way they do it. That is always the way they did it. You know, Tom Frame was usually the letterer. And as you see, I drew the whole thing. I'm not even sure I was very aware of where the lettering was going to go. And as you can see, it had to be stuck in all kinds of awkward places.
Right, you got it over the Green Giant's jawline here and there. That feels like a whole discipline unto itself to try to figure out how to like accommodate a letterer.
Yes,
very wordy.
What?
It's a big word count. You know, there's a lot of space for the letter. The lettering needs a lot of space.
I think in later work, you know, by the time I was doing Camelot and stuff like that and Killing Joke, I think I was pretty much specifying where the word balloons should go and allocating space for them. But I don't think I was very aware of it here. Yeah, there's the Green Giant again. And who are the other characters? There was a banana.
Mr.
Oh, there's a Mr. Mr. Peanut. Now, this the guy on the bottom right, I think that was, we have a sugar company here called Tate and Lyle. I think Mr. Tate was the founder of the Tate Gallery. Have you heard of the Tate Gallery?
Yes.
In London. And that was the little sugar cube man was their mascot, their logo. And then, of course, there's the Michelin man
right
on the right.
That's our guy right here.
Brian, did you keep a morgue file?
Now, a what?
A morgue file, like for reference? Like, did you have clipped out, magazines referencing people, vehicles, advertising, mascots?
I guess I must have done. I was always cutting out pages all the time and putting them into folders. Of course, now we have Google and Wikipedia, and you can look up anything instantly, can't you? But at the time, I would have had folders full of faces and things, and not that I would copy, but I would sort of use for reference. I guess I wouldn't have made a point of keeping a folder full of Michelin Man and Alka-Seltzer boys or anything like that. So I assume I would have had to have gone and found those things.
Would you have a network set up with guys like Dave Gibbons or Mick McMahon to kind of share reference material? I know that's sort of the beauty of sharing studios and things.
Well, Mick and Dave did share a studio. I've never shared a studio with anybody other than my wife.
Right.
But never with another comic artist. And I've occasionally I've inked Dave Gibbons's work, and Dave has inked my work. He did some inking on DREDD, I think, when I was getting behind, as did Gary Leach. But apart from that, we don't really collaborate in that way. We just rescue each other occasionally.
Right.
Pill boys are going through a hard time.
Yeah, they are. Look at that.
By the way, neither of these pages have your signature on it, which suggests to me they may be the black market pages.
Possibly, yes. Yeah. You see, the thing is, occasionally, very nice people have said, "Look, I've just heard this story about these pages, and I bought a page recently, and I believe it's not what it's one of the ones that didn't go through you, i.e., me." And we've kind of stroked our chins, and we've occasionally they've floated a bit of dough my way, a small amount, just as a kind of gesture. I mean, there's nothing I can do about it now.
Right.
I mean, the only thing I would like to do is expose the people who took the pages.
Yeah.
I mean, there was a sort of chain of people who were had access to the artwork in the vaults. I mean, all sorts of people were borrowing bits of artwork to go into fanzines or to go into things of that sort, or I guess fanzines and things of that sort. And those are the people who would have lifted the pages. And I would imagine all of them would be people I knew quite well. So I'd quite like, and I think I know who it was actually, but I can't prove it.
Sure.
But, yeah.
Seeing images like this that Brian draws, where there's a very clear, like the horizon line is so low, and seeing the ink kind of go around the contour of the figure so correctly is just, there is such a lesson to learn there. Because like any of those lines, if they were off, it would mess with the three-dimensionality of what he's trying to do on this 2D surface, and it's just very noteworthy.
The thing I like about that figure is that it's so not heroic. It's so not a superhero. You know, he's old. He looks old there, doesn't he? And sort of hunched and defeated. And I don't like all these kind of big, sort of showy, muscly heroes. I like a bit of humanity. So I think that was about as decrepit as I ever drew him.
I think we have Judge Caligula with his fishbowl. Right.
Yes.
Would you ever get, like from editorial, would they ask you to change anything significant? Like, would they ever look at the figure and say, Judge Dredd should be more heroic? Or... No.
The only thing that happened with that story is that it was based, because a lot of the Judge Dredd stories were sort of based on news or current events or something, or some kind of element of the politics of the time. And this whole story was based on a TV show called I, Claudius, which was basically the story of the emperor. And he had played by Derek Jacobi, I think. And in the drama on the TV, he made his senator, he made his horse his senator, didn't he? So in this story, in Judge Cal, which is a sort of our version of that whole Roman saga, he makes his fish, doesn't he? He makes his fish his second in command.
So good, man.
I love that.
When it's time for you to draw a strip, there is always so much imaginative work required for set pieces, scenery, extra characters and things. And I'm looking at this vehicle right here.
Yeah.
Do you just basically draw this one time, or do you have any time in the schedule to fiddle around in a sketchbook to come up with these different?
No, I think that I don't remember. No, I don't. I think that just happened on the page. That's not a vehicle that was specified. Now, you know that this was inked by Gary Leach, these pages.
Yeah, we see that right here.
Ah, it's right there, is it? Excellent. Yeah, you see, I haven't got the artwork in front of me, so some of those panels I inked myself. Others, I believe, I can see were inked by Gary.
What's really fascinating is that I turn the page, I look at this, it has a little bit of the Krusty Bunker, Neil Adams vibe to it. Gary's bringing a much bolder line, like a thicker line than what I've seen you put in here. And
I remember talking to him about it, and he did say yes, he was using a thicker line than he thinks I would have. There's a lot of zipper tone on there, isn't there?
Yeah.
Are you applying all of that yourself, or is that something that Gary Leach is doing?
Well, I mean, he inked it. I mean, that would have left my hands in pencil, so I guess we were both using. I mean, can you see from your page whether it's a very light or dark or thick? I mean, sometimes the dots are so fine that it could. The print process could struggle with the fineness of the dot screen, so it's often safer to use a fairly large. My screen over here keeps going dark. I'm using it as lighting here. I suspect. I mean, the bottom left-hand panel, for instance, is darker than I would use. I would generally use like a 30% or even a 20 or 10% screen when I was putting zipper down. But there's a lot on the top left, isn't there?
Right.
Yeah, that is a full panel.
It's good. It's good.
I'm looking at some of the modeling that Leach is doing on these sort of reptilian hands by scalpeling off those white areas, and it's just so fascinating with Zipatone. When you start to cut some white into it, it really adds that three-dimensionality.
Yes, I used to enjoy doing that. Yeah, using a scalpel to. Now, I think that is all penciled and inked by me. Gary wasn't on either of those pages. Now, look at that balloon right in the middle of that cover.
Covering up some nice stuff, too.
Yeah. It's a shame, isn't it? But, I mean, when I drew that cover, I may not have known what, what words the guys were going to be saying. So I didn't really know how much room they needed for that cover. I don't think a cover is scripted. Is it? I don't remember how it was agreed upon, but there you go.
The archival process is telling on you here, because we see these lines back here, and the finish of the boot, it's a different ink than Indian ink, and it's faded a whole lot. So it's like a micron pen or something.
You're right. You're absolutely right. And I've only got a fairly small screen here, but I think when I looked at that, I remember I pretty much fluffed that boot because it wasn't really a very important part of the picture.
Right.
So I must have used some kind of marker pen of some sort.
Yeah, it's fun too, because like at the end of the lines, you see the sort of bleed of the
dot
pen
from the pen.
Yeah.
That's what we explore at this stage when we do these kind of videos. Brian, when you do a piece like these alligator creatures coming at you, do you light box them and then just kind of change little things, like as you do the next guys?
I don't think
it's all different poses.
Yeah. No, I don't think I ever used a light. I've got a light box down to my left, but I very rarely used it. I don't think I used a light box. I used an autograph projector for my DC work more, for covers and stuff like that, because the rough would be drawn sort of that gosh, that's a really weird. There's a delay on here, but quite a small, what we call A4 rough. And I would put that in an artograph projector and project it up to artwork size. But all of this was pretty much sort of drawn on the page. There's no lightbox involved there. Now, I think the guy in the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th panel, I think that was supposed to be Carlos. Has he got a name on his badge? Has he got a badge?
I don't see the badge, but I was absolutely going to ask you. Oh, it's Judge Fernandez.
Yeah. Well, that would be Carlos Esquerra. I think that we were modeling him on Carlos because he looks like that. He looked like that.
Would the artograph projector come into play with drawing this thing?
No, I don't think so. I don't. This is so inadequate because I really can't remember. There certainly wasn't a model of that.
Okay.
I don't know what you see. Mick and I were alternating on these stories, weren't we? Whether he would have designed that vehicle himself, and it had been in an earlier issue, and I just thought, right, I've got to draw this bloody thing. I couldn't really tell you for sure unless we were to look at the story before to see who originally drew it.
Would you start to get into a panic phase on page 7, or like when it's like the end of a story? I'm imagining this is like one of the last like pages. So would you put some energy on each page as you're putting it together for a week's worth of strip, or is there a time where you got to just like really get the work done at the end?
The hardest I ever worked was when I was drawing Powerman, because there were something like, I don't know, 15 pages or something like that. And when I was doing the last, say, 5 pages, I just would have to stay up all day and all night and all day the next day to get it done. But I don't remember. By the time I was drawing this stuff, I was living in a flat in central London, and I used to work really late hours. I'd work till about 5:30 a.m. and then, have a break. Well, not have a break, but I'd finish. But I don't remember ever it being a real panic to get it finished the way the Powerman stuff was. Because, Powerman had a schedule. It had to come out every 2 weeks. Powerman was bi-monthly. Is that right? Every 2 weeks.
Bi-weekly, every 2 weeks.
Bi-weekly. And so there was a deadline. There was no getting out of that. But with this, they knew that my story they'd give me enough time for me to get done reasonably comfortably. Yeah.
Like these kind of creatures and stuff, so well designed. And it's just hard to imagine that, you basically design them on the page as you're asked to draw them.
Yeah, I don't recall ever. I did do some tryout images of the 4 dark judges. I remember that I drew them in pencil or something. Now, I'll tell you something about that big panel on the left-hand page. The figure, if you go up a little bit to the right, the guy who's eating something, I was having him eating a rat. Now, it's a little blurry, but they did paint that out. They thought, for some reason, they just didn't like the fact that he was chawing on a rat. So somebody painted, what is he eating, by the way? What does it look as if he's eating?
It's funny. It's just kind of a mound, almost like a potato or something, but you can see the tail. There's still like a little tail sticking out.
Well, Jan Shepherd was the art director, I think that's what you'd call her, on 2000 AD, and she made a number of changes, made a few changes here and there. But by the way, I watched you live this afternoon, and you were talking about having a guest later on today.
Yes,
was that
sir.
me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yes. Thanks so much too. This is such a pleasure, and it's so cool to have this kind of thing on the record.
Now, I'll tell you something. When I first went to New York to visit DC, I've got a friend over here who was Richard Burton, who was working at 2000 AD. He was friends with Paul Levitz at DC, and he arranged for me to visit the DC offices. And they didn't really know who I was. This was about 1978. And I went to a few comic shops around the place because I had heard that 2000 AD had surfaced to some extent in comic shops as early as 78, 79. And I said, do you have any 2000 ADs? And he said, not really. They're really on crap paper. We don't really sell that stuff. So it would have been this stuff, I guess.
That was a revelation. We interviewed Steve Bissett on the
Yeah.
channel, and he was collecting 2000 AD when it was being serialized. I think he was getting it from Hanley's in
Was he?
New York. I think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, he was collecting that. Look at this Clark Kent looking guy.
Yeah, wow.
Yeah. Yeah. I was sort of, I was always a DC fan, and yeah, it was my attempt to make him look like Clark Kent, actually. Yeah.
And look at that. We got a Barry Windsor Smith Conan right
Have
there.
we?
Yeah.
Is that what?
With like from issue 1, that
Yes.
helmet. So fun, man. Seeing that non-archival pen again, showing up in like little spots.
Now I can't see too clearly what you're pointing at, but I mean the thing about this stuff is that it was funny.
Yeah.
It was there was funniness, there was humor, and also pretty grim horror. Sort of, I mean, kind of, and it was not a combination that I ever saw in American comics at the time. Would you back me up on that, or am I wrong?
For sure. Like the closest character to a Judge Dredd to explore this sort of fascism of
Yes.
stuff at this way would probably be like Marvel's Punisher, and they play that for serious in such a big way, and like a lot of the writers, they have a conservative bend to their politics, and they like explore that in there, which is perfect for that kind of comic, because you have this guy doing Old Testament retribution and punishment on people for stealing sugar or something like this. And in Judge Dredd, it's funny, but in Punisher comics from Marvel, it's like, well, yeah, you just have to kill every person who's ever done drugs because they're bad people, and they're not joking about it.
No, I know. I mean, one American artist, and I can't even remember who it is, so I can't get him into trouble. He he was asked about Judge Dredd, and he said, "Oh no, I don't like Judge Dredd. It's fascist." And he didn't seem to realize that the lead character is not a sympathetic character. We drew him in a way that you didn't really like him. He's a Nazi, basically. He's the sort of he's a part of a fascist police state. You kind of toy with him being heroic at times, but also, I mean, in the case of pages like this, he's being cruel. And so my feeling was that the perspective of the reader was going to have to be somewhere in between him and his protagonist. So the protagonists were sort of crazy and dangerous, but he was a really nasty piece of work himself. And so you didn't really quite know. I mean, one of my very favorite stories from Judge Dredd was not drawn by me. I can't remember who drew it. It was Judge Dredd turned up at somebody's door, an ordinary innocent guy, because his name had come up in the compulsory organ transplant program. So Dredd or somebody turns up to inform this guy that he's got to donate his liver to, but he doesn't want to donate his liver, so he resists the law and goes on a series of ever increasing crime waves, and ends up. Well, I don't know whether he ends up in an ISO cube at the end of it, but you couldn't possibly sympathize with the police state who are enforcing this program. You could only identify with the poor innocent guy who's going to lose his liver. So I think you've got to somehow have a perspective on this stuff that is not really thinking Judge Dredd, he's a really cool heroic guy. Next question.
It's a Rorschach test, like it's like Archie Bunker here in the state on All in the Family. Like, there are people laughing at certain jokes for the wrong reasons.
Yes.
Yeah.
And Judge Dredd comics work that way.
I think so. Yeah.
Brian, did you find the work you were doing, the drawing part of Judge Dredd, funny? Because it feels like the art is really straightforward and the humor is more in the story writing side, almost like the art is the straight man.
Well, at times, I mean, you had to not make it obvious that Judge Dredd is ridiculous. You've got to sort of try to get the viewer to do the work. But I mean, some of these characters, like that guy on the whatever that thing he's lying on, he's a kind of funny, isn't he? He's got a pot belly.
Good acting on the guy looking down at
Yes,
him.
I don't know where he came from. I think I've always had the ability to sort of draw characterful. I mean, he looks a little bit like the guy from House of Mystery or House of Secrets,
Oh yeah,
or
right.
possibly the people from Creepy and Eerie. You know, those mascots in Creepy and Eerie. One of those sort of faces.
Right.
I don't think he was based on anybody that I can think of. But yeah, at times you draw the thing straight, and at times you're drawing it funny.
What did you color this with?
I was using acrylic inks, I think, by then. Yeah.
It's so cool, man.
So it would be a brush with acrylic ink, and occasionally there would be airbrush. Or I think in the case of that Red Sky, it was one of those occasions when you put Frisk film on the bits you don't want to cover, and then you lather it on with some other tool or other. I think there is a page here, somewhere in here. I've got it here actually, where the we were talking about the fact that I used a kind of rag to occasionally put on. You can see it there.
Oh yeah.
That was actually white. I was talking about how I don't use whiteout very much. Well, that was an occasion where I did use whiteout, and I put it on a rag and kind of dabbed it on the page. But, yeah, we just happened to have that.
So much atmosphere in that image. Oh, the magic bullet.
Oh yes, that's rather a Carmine Infantino type panel, isn't it? I mean, he was the great artist who, in Flash, he loved those long, thin panels to have. What I'm talking about.
That's such a perfect use of that long horizontal panel for that sequence.
Yeah, I was thinking. I don't think John or whoever would have said we want a long thin panel here. I think he would have just said 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 panels there, isn't there? He would have just given me instructions for 6 panels, and I would have thought, well, let's do the top 2 like that, and then there's lots of room for the rest.
There's really good page design in that sequence too, because it's just smart not to stack the heads and to shift the alignment of the guy a little bit, just because it would be 4 heads down the whole page, and for the whole composition it works.
Yeah, directional device.
But you see you had to show the bullet coming out of the back of the head.
Yeah.
Right.
So there had to be plenty of room to the right of the head, so I had to move it forward a bit, didn't I?
It's very cinematic. It feels like you're tracking that bullet with your camera.
Yeah.
Almost like in a movie. And as the camera pans, that's the effect, as the guy's head's going to be moving from right to left.
It's a pity we don't have the script here. I don't know whether John or anybody has the scripts for this stuff, but it would be quite nice to have been able to compare what he wrote and with what I drew.
Just going back to you saying, like, we have to show the bullet coming out of the head. Do you ever pinch yourself and just say, I got the luckiest, coolest job in the universe? And this is a heck of a way to spend an afternoon.
I think so. I once drew a strip for Des Skin for his House of Hammer, and it was Vampire Circus, and I did a scene. Now, what? There was a guy's bald head was just exploding in a bloody mass. I can't remember why. Are you familiar with that strip at all?
No.
Possibly not. And that was heavily censored, painted out. Because I always think that even though there's humor in this stuff, that if something is going to be violent, I'm not going to hold back.
Right.
There's got to be some way of making it look violent.
That last story to me felt very much like an EC story.
Yeah.
And now we turn the page here, and I feel like this is a Warren magazine that we've turned into, an eerie or a creepy.
Now, what are we calling this stuff I was using? Are we calling this craft tint?
Craft tint's the company. Duo Shade is the...
I might have called it a duotone board. And it came with 2 chemicals, didn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
And if you paint one of the chemicals on, you get lines go... Are they crosshatch lines? I can't really see from here.
The thinner... Like the one chemical... Okay, so on the actual paper, and I'm not sure if the camera can pick this up so well, but there are these undeveloped crosshatch lines on the whole page.
Yes.
And there are two sets. There's a set going one direction and a set going another direction.
Yeah.
So one chemical, it's 2 bottles of chemicals. One chemical, the least stinky one, by the way, will develop only one set of lines.
Yeah.
The stinky one that like will give you cancer if you breathe it too long, that gives you the darker value of gray.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. I think I tried it just the once. I can't think of any other story that I used it on. I did hear that it was not going to stay very stable. So if anybody wanted the artwork, it would go brown and horrible.
Yeah, you gotta sell it right away.
Yeah.
These pages held up well.
They look good.
They're not too bad. Now, I do notice that my signature is not on those pages.
Yeah, that's a bummer.
I have a feeling, I think occasionally you asked me whether I use photo reference. And I have a feeling that face underneath the Judge Dredd logo, that first face, I may have swiped it.
It's very good lighting.
Yeah, notice that it's, I say I always light things top left, so the shadow is on the bottom right. Well, on this occasion, because there is a light to the right of them, I had to flip that. And I was feeling I might have pinched that face from somewhere, but I couldn't remember where.
I feel like the light source is one of those things you just don't see in contemporary comic book artists.
Right.
Because when I was coming up, that was huge. That's how you figured out spotting blacks and shadows and volume. And so much of that just isn't done anymore in the original art.
Yeah. And this story's contingent on that lighting everywhere.
That's what made me think of it as like the lighting is so strong throughout this.
Well, yes, I mean, it was a very moody sort of London in the fog, Jack the Ripper kind of story, wasn't it? Wow. I mean, it isn't London, but it's supposed, is he fading in the fog there or something?
Great use of that duo tone.
Feels so bright.
To really have him fade away. That's so cool.
I remember being very pleased with that top right panel on the left-hand page when he's carrying her, where the lighting is, he's lit from below, isn't he? So, the lighting is a bit different. And of course, that was supposed to be Boris Karloff, wasn't it?
Oh, nice.
Yeah. I used to do a lot of, in those days, I used to do a lot of caricatures of people. I did the Marx Brothers and Rondo Hatton. I don't know whether those pages are going to come up, are they?
Oh, right. Yeah. That Rondo Hatton might be the first Brian Bolland story I ever read. Oh, yeah, there's the Universal Hunchback.
Oh, and there's Lon Chaney, isn't it? That's right. Is it Lon? Yeah, that's the Lon Chaney Hunchback, isn't it? Because look at those guys. They're having their heads cut off.
Yeah, Judge Dredd just shot a dude in the face.
I mean, are they people or are they mannequins? They are supposed to be real people, aren't they? No. Are they?
Hey, he's the judge, man. He can do his thing. He is.
He can do whatever he likes. Yeah.
He is the law.
Yeah. That's right. He is.
So
not a bad Lon Chaney Hunchback either, I think.
Absolutely not.
Of course, you see, I had a great collection of famous monsters of Filmland going all the way back to #1.
I was going to ask.
I had loads of reference for that.
I was going to ask, man, because that looks close.
Yeah.
Getting in some covers.
Yeah. Now, the one on the left is one of those where I didn't really have it. I don't think the eagle. I think the eagle was. I don't think I drew the eagle. Is that stuck on?
There's brushstrokes.
Yeah, I think that's on the. It looks like that's on the original art. I don't see a line for a paste up or anything there.
Look at the brushstrokes.
Okay, well, I must have just maybe I blew it up. I don't remember having an autograph projector at the time. But that was one of those times when I had to get a cover done in a day, and I didn't have an idea.
Right.
A lot of the time, you just don't have an idea, and you like when I did my first Wonder Woman cover, I just drew her looking at the viewer, and it ended up looking quite good.
That's so funny because maybe 10 years after that, we get into the 90s and it feels like there's a whole, for a while, like poster covers, which would just be something like this or Wonder Woman looking at the viewer. They were so striking, but then you get like that next generation. It's like, okay, let's just do that. The standalone poster images.
I'm really stuck at the moment. I mean, I've just done 8 Batman covers, Batman One Bad Day, and each one is I've just done Clayface.
Love that Clayface, man. Like I saw this on your Instagram. Everybody needs to follow that Instagram. That Clayface is fucking Amazing.
Yeah.
I thought I'm never going to get away with that, but it turns out that if you look at the story inside, he looks pretty much like that.
That's so good.
He's just a human mess.
Oh man.
I don't know whether you know who Johnny Vegas is. We've got a guy over here called Johnny Vegas. He's a TV comedian, really, and he's a great comics fan, 2000 AD fan, and he's a friend of mine because he was, fan of him. When he was 10 years old, he came to Forbidden Planet and to have our autographs, and he's now a ceramicist. He makes clay models. So I got in touch with Johnny Vegas. You'll have to look him up, and asked him what color clay is, and he sent me some reference for what color to make Clayface. Anyway, back to the plot. Where are we?
Brian, did you ever have anybody in mind for that scowl on Judge Dredd? Is there an old football player or anybody like that
No,
inspires that?
That was just me following Mick's cues. Mick, Carlos Esquerra designed Judge Dredd visually, and but didn't draw him for the first good many months. And Mick came along and was asked to draw it in the style of Carlos, and he was a new guy. We didn't know Mick at all. I didn't know Mick, and his style was absolutely wonderful, and it was evolving week by week. And Dredd's big boots, they became a thing because I think Mick drew him that way. And I really don't remember when we first saw the scowl, but I feel it must have been Mick who, all of the time, with my more realistic style, more sort of classical style, I suppose you might say, I was trying to interpret his developments in my style. So I've forgotten exactly what the question was, but it wasn't me.
Right.
But it seemed to be his trademark, right? He always has that expression, except when he's eating umpty candy. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. It's a great couple covers with Eagle and stuff.
Yeah.
The question I was going to ask is, like, when you have to come up with a science fiction animal like this, do you start from a place of realistic animal anatomy and then push it, or are you just out of your head coming up with things?
I think I'm out of my head coming up with that stuff. I don't. John would have, or possibly Chris Lauder. Does it say who wrote this?
John Howard.
John Howard. Now, there wasn't actually a John Howard. There was a Chris Lauder who called himself possibly John. Did you say John Howard?
Yeah.
I think that might have been Chris. I don't think he would have given me any instructions as to what that thing looked like. Possibly there might have. I mean, one of them's got a kind of a mammal sitting on his head for a hat.
Right.
Yes.
That one down there. I think that was just me winging it, really. And the guy who's about to be hung, he's very much like the creatures that I came up with for the first Forbidden Planet store. Totally. I did the ads for the Forbidden Planet store when it opened in '78, and characters that look like that seem to sort of fall out of my. I was going to say pen, but I've never used a pen.
that is true. Like these kind of caricaturish images. It makes me wonder: is Basil Wolverton high on your list of influences?
Not really. No, I know who he is. No, I wouldn't say he was. I don't know. Now, I will just tell you one thing. I may have told you this before, but panel 1 on the left-hand page and the bottom right-hand panel, my old teenage friend from when we were teenagers, Dave Harwood, who grew up in the village next door to mine when I was 16 or so, he was visiting, and I always wanted to get him into 2000 AD, and he inked those two panels, top left, bottom right.
I see.
I don't know whether you can see a difference in style, but he didn't stay very long, so those are the only two things he ever inked on.
He has a very French style. It looks like the classic bande dessinée, like westerns and things.
Yeah,
textures.
Would have never picked that out as being different, but looking closely, like it does feel like there are some different marks on here.
Yeah.
Some textures and things that I don't see. I don't see it as much in this top left panel.
No.
We did a lot of stuff in our teens. We did a lot of one-off things where I would draw something and he would ink it. We did a fanzine together called it was actually called RDH Comics. RDH. This is the End Comics, and there's early strips by me and early strips by him, and later things that we did together. And I will just show you this. Actually, I've got to plug this at every possible occasion. I got this. Now then, I've got this thing coming out soon.
Yes.
It's my memoir, and down at the bottom here, you'll see that Johnny Vegas from the TV and Dave Harwood, my old childhood friend, get a name on the cover. So everybody has to rush out and buy this thing.
Absolutely. When is that coming out?
Well, it's at the printers at the moment. Did I show it on the screen long enough?
Oh, totally.
Apparently, it's at the printers. We found a few errors that had to be ironed out, but apparently it's going through the print process at the moment. And so I think Dave Gibbons's thing, memoir, and mine seem to be almost pretty much coming out at the same time, sometime in early to mid-March.
So we'll expect you two to do like a co-book tour across America this spring, summer.
Well, we've got, the two of us are actually giving a talk in a place called the Century Club in London in sometime in March, I think, to a paying audience, apparently. Anyway, back to the plot. Where are we?
We are looking.
There's another occasion where the word balloons, there was no room for the balloons. Look, they had to go. Now, you see that guy with the funny eyes. I mean, he looks like, on the top left, he looks like somebody from the Forbidden Planet ads, doesn't it? To some extent. But I mean, there were mutants. The whole of the Cursed Earth was riddled with mutants, and so you could have a field day drawing them anyhow you like. This
feels like the kind of lettering that would make you start to plan where the lettering should go, because it's such it really. It hurts a little bit of the drawing. You know, you have these feet hanging, very dramatic, and then you put a word balloon on top of that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know what I was thinking that I didn't somehow. I mean, sometimes you can't really do anything about it. If you've got you've got feet hanging from the top of the panel, and you've got people at the bottom, there is no option to leave a space, especially if there's a little inset top left. There is really no room. But I mean, if you go back to the days of like when Kurt Swan or Schaffenberger or people were drawing Superman, all the panels were squares or rectangles, and pretty much half of each panel there would be plenty of room to put the word balloons in. And then somebody like Neil Adams came along and broke all the rules. You know, he had panels going in all kinds of directions, and sort of people sort of squashed into all kinds of parts of the panel, and the word balloons had to go wherever they possibly could. So I guess we're in that sort of era. Yeah, what have we got here?
We're going to have to talk about this cover here.
On the right.
Because of that stretched, skewed image. I see no paste up.
No, that looks like it was drawn.
Was there a secret trick to doing this cover, Brian?
Yeah, well, the secret trick is simply that you draw the thing in pencil with a grid, and then you draw the grid. I don't know whether you can see any evidence of a grid.
No grid evidence.
And you just widen the grid. You know, I mean, that's the only way I can think I did it, because I didn't have a computer or any of that sort of thing.
There was
so I drew them quite normally, and then I put a grid over them, possibly on a piece of paper, and then drew the grid, but twice as wide, or more than twice as wide, or possibly, and just drew the same drawing to the grid, the new grid.
That's really interesting.
It does do your eyes in, though. I do.
It works.
I really like that cover.
It's amazing.
Super trippy to look at. It's so believable. Like the edge lines are fatter on the helmet and then really thin at the top. You know, if you really stretched a drawing, it's exactly what you would get.
Yeah.
I think it is. Yeah, I think because you see, I think I told you before, but I did technical drawing in school, and so a thing like that would be something we might do in technical drawing.
You know, one of the tricks to do that was sort of unlocked by Dave Sim not too long ago on his like Secret Life of Alex Raymond, whatever that comic is called, where you take the autograph projector and you actually shine it on the paper on a skew angle, and it will push that stretched quality.
Oh yeah. My autograph projector was a bit annoying because if you put the prelim in it and then you flip the thing, you've got the thing attached to vertically so you can project it onto the ground, it somehow made the top of the drawing bigger than the bottom. So I actually had to adapt it so that I could not have it quite at a 90-degree angle, because it was making everybody big-headed and small-footed.
Yeah, that's the thing that happens just even with the cameras that we have when we're looking at these episodes. We call it tombstoning, where if you're not perfect, it will set things askew a bit.
Oh, okay.
How about this 2-pager, dude?
Yeah, that's these 2 pages, because all of these stories started with a double-page spread, which I think somebody would have ended up in color, not by me. Didn't it?
Often, yeah.
It was quite challenging to draw a big double-page spread. Some of them worked quite well. The one with that vehicle going across in front of the presidents or whatever that. I might not be remembering it properly, but it was quite a challenge to fill that double-page spread at the beginning of each story. It wasn't something it came easy to me, but I must say those characters are pretty crazy, aren't they?
It's such a striking image, this
It is.
figure with the pieces missing and stuff.
Unforgettable.
Very, very awesome.
Yeah.
Brian, when you go through this artwork like we're doing today, do you remember, what's going on in your life when you're drawing this? Like, how much memory is connected in these images when you look at them now?
I can remember where I was. I can remember the room I was in. It was in the front room of a flat near Russell. Have you ever been to London?
No.
Near Russell Square. I lived there and worked at night. I do remember. I remember doing the Dark Judges. I remember one story that I remember a cover I did in a day. It was one of the Titan Eagle comic reprints that I did the cover in a day, and I signed it. I didn't sign it Bolland. I signed it Eric Phillips because I didn't think it was very good. It was a DR and Quench cover. It probably won't be in this book, will it?
No.
I do remember a few, not a lot.
Did you draw DR and Quench many times? Because I do know your artwork in relation to them, so I wonder if it's that cover.
I drew them a few times on the covers of the Eagle reprints of Judge Dredd and 2000 AD material.
Okay.
I never drew the stories. Alan Davis, of course, drew the stories, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that was Alan Moore, wasn't it? Back when Alan Moore was doing great stuff. He's always done great stuff. But DR and Quench was hilarious. Nuke your parents was their slogan.
Oh, fantastic stuff, man. College boys. DR and Quench are. Frat boys.
Yeah. Now, why these guys? I mean, why these guys are traveling around on giant monocycles? I can't remember whether it was me improvising or what.
That was one of the fun things, like getting any new issues of, like, we got the Eagle comics here in the States, and they were plentiful. They were like at Kmart. It was very plentiful. That was the beauty and the fun thing to look forward to is like, what new crazy ideas are we going to see explored?
I really love doing the covers of the Eagle. I'd really love to see all of my covers and Mick's covers in a book somewhere, because I really enjoyed doing those covers, because I already read the stories and there were some great ideas in there, and the ideas just tumbled onto the page, as I think I said before.
They look like you were having a ball making those covers. They really do.
Yeah, they were fun. I love the Judge Fish cover. Now then, where are we now?
Looking at the cover to this book.
Oh, the cover of the book.
The Block Wars.
Again. Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Just so much imagination on every single page. Drawing these bikes.
I mean, the thing about those bikes, it was always easiest to draw them coming at you because, drawing the things in sort of isometric projection would have been harder because they wouldn't work in real life, would they?
Would you? Did you draw like a master version and then kind of refer back to that? I mean, these are freshly drawn, but
yeah. I really can't remember. I did do one because over the years I've come back to do sort of covers on 2000 AD, and I did do one where there were 3 of those bikes coming at you, and I think I kind of put them in the artograph projector and just drew each one, and the big one in the middle and the 2 smaller ones around the outside, because they look the same in every case. So you've got to cut a few corners when possible, but I can't see many.
Right.
There.
Really
those
cool.
buildings were. I don't know whether Carlos or Mick first came up with those kinds of buildings, but they were very much the way they did them. Quite hard to draw, actually.
Isn't it funny at this point now in 2023 to think that the title 2000 AD was far enough in the future that
it was ridiculously far in the future. Yeah, I remember going to China in 1984, and I thought, wow, that's ridiculous. That's like the book. But and then we had 2000 AD. Now you see, the thing is, my buildings would be like blocks, like that.
Yeah.
Because I don't quite know how I could have drawn a block wall between blobby buildings. In this case, it made more sense for them to be the old-fashioned, straight up and down skyscrapers.
This is just looks like absolute madness. You've got the perspective of those buildings, and then figures just moving all about.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was quite a good eagle cover that, I did, of a whole lot of people falling between the buildings, and while they're falling, they're shooting each other.
But that's not all.
I think Judge Dredd is leaning out and saying, "This block war is getting out of hand." He's saying.
And then here are guys, surrendering, and it's a whole crowd. It's not very much cheated in there.
No. I don't like drawing crowds. It's hard work.
Oh, I hear you, man.
Yeah.
And see, here's one of those pieces. Would this be that Hessian rag?
Yes. I call it Hessian rag. It was Hessian is like sacking, isn't it? It was
we call it burlap sack.
Possibly, yeah. I'm not even sure it was as crude as that. I think it was. It wasn't like a handkerchief or something like that. It was a piece of material. I mean, you can see the texture of it there, can't you? But you just hold it in your hand and you squirt a bit of ink on it, and I would imagine those pale bits on his knees were done with whiteout.
Yeah.
Does it look as if it's whiteout?
Yeah, it is. Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
That was just me not being bothered to draw his feet.
The atmosphere and mood of it is just so perfect. Did you ever play around with that rag experimentally anywhere else before this?
I'm sure I have, yes.
It's a really great texture in that it reminds me of the duotone, and it must be the whatever the thread is in that rag, because you get these.
It looks like dots.
Beautiful, yeah. It's very interesting for a texture. It works so well. I'm surprised it's not a more common effect. Yeah.
No, I haven't used it. Well, I don't. I work on. What am I saying? I haven't used it. I read somebody. I was reading about myself, as you do, and somebody said Bolland's been working digitally for 30 years. He said, did they even have computers in those days or something? And they said all this time he's been working with a mouse. And I said, no, I've never drawn with a mouse. And I worked it out. I've actually been working digitally for 25 years now. It's a quarter of a century.
It's amazing.
Yeah. We were talking about one of those early tutorials you had posted years ago. Now at this point, 20 years ago maybe, and somebody sent me a PDF. They had done screen captures of it.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Yeah.
Yeah.
It was the one with Batman surrounded by zombies, wasn't it? He was being completely swamped, and I think one of them is biting his cat. The the cowl, I think it's called. He's got his teeth on his cowl, and he's kind of trying to bite it. We were talking about how the Joker stuck his fingers into the eye sockets of Batman's cowl in The Killing Joke, and I think on this cover the zombie was. I'm digressing here, aren't I?
But that tutorial was a revelation, because it's the Brian Bolland artwork that we know, but he's saying to us that he did it digitally, so that suggests that it's possible to preserve your hand but use digital implements.
Yes.
Brian, do you remember lettering? Did you do the lettering right here? It looks like there's
No, I did not do the lettering. No, I think that's always been Tom Frame or pretty much him. It looks as if the thing on the bottom's fallen off, doesn't it?
Yeah, it looks like it could have been to be continued, or the
name of the story. Mm-hmm. It says next prog here, so it's be probably the name of the story or part 2 or whatever.
Yeah,
there's a little bit of lettering there for Judge Mortis.
Oh yeah, but yes, that's true. I mean, the badges, Judge Dredd's badge, and whatever that says there, that would have had to have been me, of course. Yeah. But all of the dialogue is added by Tom Frame.
What an incredible image in terms, again, of like that depth.
Yeah.
Because you get so sucked into these judges. They're so mesmerizing. And then you realize, like, this foreground piece, it's almost equally up to task, and it's just totally different planes. That's a heck of a page.
Did I show you the sheep skull that I used for Mortis?
Do you still have that?
Yeah. It's right here. Hang on, I won't long. Can you see right into my studio from where you are?
Yeah, pretty good.
Okay. And Brian, you know something that happens? It happens every time we talk. Maybe halfway through. That's so awesome. There he is.
There he is.
Wow.
About halfway through our conversations, both times that we chatted, your spinner rack begins to spin, and it makes me wonder about ghosts or cats or something.
No, I'm the only person here. It does rotate, but
it spins all by itself when we're chatting, and people in the comments are like, "Is there a poltergeist in the BOLLAND studio?"
Well, I can't reach it from where I am, so
exactly.
I've not noticed that.
Yeah, it's happened both times.
It just rotated because I moved it, but
yes.
Brian, would you use templates or anything to do like eyes like this in order to get matching irises and pupils?
I don't think so. Possibly. I really can't remember using a template of any. I suppose if there are two things that are identical, I mean, I can do that now, of course, in Photoshop. I can draw a pupil and then I can copy it and move it over to the other eye. So there are ways I can cheat in Photoshop, but in a case like, I mean, are they identical, those eyes?
They look pretty close.
I don't remember. I might have used a bit of tracing paper occasionally, but I couldn't say.
These kind of explosions, do you eyeball that, or is there a center point, like when you use perspective, and then you trace all the lines back to that?
I did have a technique where I would put a little bit of tape on the fulcrum of the thing. Is that a word? And just rotate the ruler so that. I think Neil Adams used to use that kind of starburst effect sometimes. I remember him doing some wonderful Superman and Flash covers. Superman, I think in particular. There was a Superman and an action cover that I remember he used that kind of effect on. But I would use a ruler with a bit of tape on the end. Yeah. What have we got here?
More crowds coming at us.
Lovely. Oh, lovely. Great stuff.
It's that kind of stuff. When you're tasked with doing that, people like Jaime Hernandez or Alex Toth come to mind, because you just know they're going to figure out a way to communicate crowd without using as much lines as you're using or I'm using. And I curse them.
Yeah, not a lot of shortcuts there.
have I talked to you about Alex Toth and how much I admired his work? I'm sure I did.
Let's talk to him.
To me, he was the king of comics. No other name comes to mind. I think he understood and knew it, but he was a master, an absolute master of the medium of comics. And he said that, I think at some point he said that if you look at things, not everything is in focus. I don't know how to draw things that are not in focus. He could do it. So I find it really difficult to draw a crowd scene because I don't know how to draw an out of focus person in the background really. But you do after you've drawn a few figures, you can't possibly have as much detail as they go back into the distance.
Right.
Yeah.
That's interesting with your in focus stuff. I always think about like high definition cameras and television and video screens now. Like everything is so sharp now. In a weird way, your art was ahead of its time because like now we can appreciate it whether we're showing it on a video or having a book like this. You know, that precision is something that has become more a part of our world. And, you know, it really helps your art in a lot of ways where it's like, keep it coming, you know?
Oh, there's that page.
Nice.
Yeah, I think I probably showed you this before, but this is the artwork to that page. I'm getting better at working out how to do this little screen on the top right-hand corner.
Yes, sir.
But by the time it goes up here, you see, I can't see it anymore because my head's disappeared.
Brian, these pages that you're showing us, are they pages that you hold in high reverence that you just want to hang on to for forever, or?
Yes, there are pages that I'd like to keep some forever. And I mean, these are not the best ones, I don't think. But I'd like to have a few. I've got a few. What else have I got here? Oh yeah, there's this other one. I don't know where this is going to come up, is it? Let's see.
Oh yeah, the water stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. You asked me. Yes, I mean, if somebody came along with a ridiculous offer, I might consider it. That top left-hand page, I did keep.
I'm so glad to hear that.
Myself.
What did he say?
No, I don't still have it. I was offered a good sum of money for it, and I sold it to a friend. But I think it's probably worth more now than he paid for it.
Oh, definitely.
At the time, I thought, wow. But what I've seen of the price of artwork now, I think it would probably go for a bit more now.
Oh yeah, that's an iconic. I mean, that's the Judge Dredd image.
Yes. Yeah, it is. I mean, when you see collections, often the end papers are that top left-hand panel, and I think John Wagner has that panel on his business card.
I don't know.
It is pretty.
You guys saw Punisher Warzone? There's a scene. This is in that movie.
Yeah.
Yes, and it's got a man. It's that exact moment.
Now I don't know what that is. You'll have to tell me. Does he punch his fist through somebody's head or something?
Yes, and it's like a gloved fist, you know, kind of like an armored up fist, and right through somebody's head, and it is like shot wise, it's the exact shot. It'd be like, you know, hold it up to the director and say, okay, we're going to put this on the screen, but just with Punisher instead of.
I mean, I have seen my panels in films, so I can imagine. I mean, was the character in that Punisher film, was he wearing a helmet of some sort?
I can't remember that detail. It's been a long time since I saw it, but I mean, it is this moment.
Yeah.
So
those buildings were quite fun. I don't. I found it easier to draw those buildings without easier than the blobby buildings in Mega City, I think.
But your lack of use of white media makes it still hard with these windows and things to draw each of those and not cut in with white out.
Yeah. Now, the top right-hand panel on the left-hand page, that does look like whiteout to me.
Sure.
Is that why?
Yeah, you took the toothbrush to it for sure.
Oh, is that what I did? Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a toothbrush, is it? Yeah, I guess it must be.
It's a spatter. I'll say that. It's a spatter.
So it's a whiteout. It is whiteout I was using. There is no other way of painting white onto artwork other than using whiteout.
Looks like the paper sizes have been changing over the course of this book.
Well, I guess so. If they're being reproduced artwork size, I mean, you can see from what I showed you that the cover of number 11 is huge,
Yeah.
but these ones are, look, they are smaller. You can see that, can't you? So I guess they have changed in size. This chair is still making a lot of loud clacking noises. There you go.
I think when we did the original video where you and I were looking at this, I don't remember if I did this, but that face is so symmetrical that I wonder if you drew like kind of half the face and then traced it, or you just
might have done. Is it? Yeah, I might well have done. Yes, occasionally I do like a symmetrical image. Occasionally.
Yeah.
I've just done a Wonder Woman cover, which where she's looking square on at the viewer and in a sort of hypnotic stare, and she's pretty symmetrical. But so I may have done. But so, isn't the mouth a little bit askew?
Right.
Not very
Possibly
much.
The
just
eyes.
A little.
Yeah.
Brian, as we progress through this book, do you get a sense of yourself getting confident, as an artist? Because I look at like some of these pages and it feels like the layouts, the compositions, they're just incredible. And I wonder if that's something you remember developing over the course of.
Yes, I think by the time I mean, from a technical point of view, using the brush and the ink is a technical challenge because the brush only stays good for a while. I never really liked a brand new brush, and occasionally, eventually, the brush would get old and clogged up, and I would sort of do this. There it goes. You end up with bristles that don't actually, and they're not the same length, so that when they impact on the paper, the two prongs of the brush separate. So you end up trying to draw a line, and you end up drawing two lines by mistake. But when I was drawing the 30 probably pages of the Dark Judges, I was really flowing with that. The tools of my trade were behaving very well, and I was sort of motoring with it. So I guess you could say I had a degree of confidence. Now we've got one of those glare effects on the left, haven't we?
Would that be artist tape for the white and the acrylic ink over top of that?
Now you might be able to tell better than me because you've got the book in front of you and I've just got a little screen. Does that look like white out to you?
You know what? I was going to say no, but then I see like little bits right there, and it looks like I see
little
some
pieces. I don't know, maybe cleaned up a little bit.
I don't think I could possibly have painted that sky and not painted the white. I think that is got to be white out, isn't it? So I mean, for instance, the sky would have been done as a wash. And
could this little blaster piece, this orange and yellow, could that be markers? Would that be crazy for you to use a marker?
Do you know something? You could probably tell better than me on that occasion.
It looks like
I might. I mean, it would have been a pen. It would have been definitely a. I mean, I could have even used crayon, sort of.
Yeah, there are blue lines in this green that are just like straight lines. It's hard to.
It could easily have been like Derwent crayons or something. Just anything really to try to put a little bit of color in there.
Yeah, it's a great effect because it keeps that speed going.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it's awesome.
There was an occasion where I didn't cheat and have all three of the bikes coming at you in the same direction. Does that? I don't think those bikes have been flipped, have they? Because they're
let's
lit.
see. Yeah. The eagle's still the same, so it's not just one drawn and then you flip it on tracing paper, unless you just fix that part. But
yeah, I could have done. That next page is looking very yellow. I don't know why it's gone
so yellow. What do you think it was drawn on? Because it's the most kind of art, like non-light fast, whatever. It looks like it comes from the 1800s. This piece of paper.
Yeah, someone did not.
I did. I drew that. I drew that in the 1800s, definitely. Yeah.
Because even the logo has, like it's all consistently changed color. Somebody.
Well, I don't know. I really can't remember what I feel that I supplied my own artboard, and I really can't remember where I go to get it or what kind of board it would. Was there Bristol board? Was there a thing called Bristol board?
You would know better than us for sure. Well, I guess how to draw comics
board
would exist in. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, that name does ring a bell, but I couldn't tell you whether I was using a different board for that or not.
You know what I could say about this piece is, how this artwork is sourced from a lot of different places, and different
Yeah.
people are scanning it in. I'm seeing no
Yes.
brush strokes or anything. So whoever scanned this in really could have been playing around with levels in a weird way, like, because there's not one brush stroke. So maybe by increasing the levels to get the black, pure black,
Yeah.
it just bumped up some weird paper level
It could
color.
be. Yeah, the black is
Yes.
super flat on that image. You know, it
Yes,
almost looks
that's
like it's
true.
been printed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it could be, couldn't it? Could easily be, yes. I think quite a lot of people, when asked, they had this artwork in frames,
Yeah.
behind glass, and they really didn't want to take it apart. Take the back off and take the artwork out to scan it, because it was just, too much work for little reward.
Yeah, it's for the good of comics culture to do that. But then when you frame a good piece of artwork, that could be multi hundreds of dollars of precision.
That's right. Now that's this page, isn't it? Is that the same page?
The Brian Bolland Rain.
Yeah,
something to marvel at.
Yeah, I'm well known. I'm well known for my puddles. I do good puddles.
All drawn.
Yeah, we discussed that, didn't we?
Yes,
we don't need to cover that again.
I know.
It's unbelievable. Like, talk about looking difficult.
And there was quite a good page to follow. I don't know whether that's coming up next, but there's a good fight.
Boom, there it is.
There it is. There it is. There it is. Yeah.
The bingo button.
Quite a decent fight scene there. Fight scene in the water.
And once again, like it's very rigorous work. But I remember I got the Eagle comic where Brian draws it again. Like the masochism of it. It's amazing. It's astounding. It's very inspirational.
Now, the thing about those Eagle comics was that because the format in an American comic was taller and slimmer than these rather square pages, I think somebody put a bit of work into extending them upwards, didn't they?
It depends. Like Eagle, the reproduction was good, and they managed it well. I think there was just a kind of a little gutter or something. Like it was, but it's when it gets to Fleetway. What's IBC or no. When it becomes Quality Comics,
Yes.
They took your fucking artwork that you work so hard on in this nice kind of square, and they just skewed it skinny, and so it extended this way to kind of abide by American comic book size.
Yeah.
So everybody has these like kidney bean heads. And the lettering is all italic or like
very tall, skinny lettering.
Condensed. Yeah. And I remember thinking, because like the only British person I ever saw when I was a little kid that I knew was definitely British was like Prince Charles. And he's kind of got that bean head. And then so I'm looking at these comics of all these bean head people, and I'm like, okay, in the UK, everybody just has a bean head.
Now, I did ask you in an email what a bean head was, because I didn't quite know what you meant, but I mean, I did all the Eagle covers for Nick Landor at Titan Books, and I loved the whole job. And then Des Skin took over with quality, and only one of the covers that I'd drawn for Nick then went on the front of a quality, and it was one where there's a gigantic ape, and Judge Dredd is arresting him for sort of destroying biplanes or something. And then I was no longer on the job, and I didn't see any of the quality reprints after that at all. But
one of the great proprietors of comics here in Pittsburgh, Bill Boychel, he has this whole thesis about how like the names of these kind of comic publishers point out their deficiencies, and when it was Quality Comics, they were printed on the worst paper with the worst production values and doing those weird beanhead skew things, man. So it's like they're over delivering in their publisher title. Yeah.
Now the red on that left hand page cover was a stick-on. It was plastic.
Interesting.
Yeah, I can't remember where I would have got it from or what it was, but I'm pretty
You
certain
don't think it was like a
that
ruby lith or something? Because it looks like it's weird.
I.
It looks like it has brush strokes, doesn't it, Jimmy?
It does, yeah.
Oh, does it?
It
Um,
does.
oh, well, I could be wrong then, but I seem to remember sticking it on.
I wonder if the
But I could
adhesive
be wrong.
like is
Yeah,
That's
letting up in
possible.
spots and
Yeah, that
things.
would be possible.
yeah.
Definite
Now the right
airbrush.
hand, yeah, that's all airbrush. Now the right hand cover, Time Out magazine. Are you familiar with Time Out magazine?
I've heard of it.
Yeah. Well, Time Out magazine started as a little, we call it A5, sort of one of the underground, because in the 60s we had kind of hippie underground alternative magazines like Oz and Friends and um, what were the others? And Time Out was one of them. But so it covered a lot of left field kind of Jermaine Greer and people like that were in it. And then it was doing film reviews, and then it was doing TV listings. And then it got bigger, and it became the guide to London. It was a weekly magazine that covered just about. It had features at the beginning, and then at the back it would have film reviews and what was going on in the theatre, and eventually it would have all the TV listings. And somehow they had cottoned on to the fact that this Judge Dredd was popular, and I was very pleased to be asked to do the cover. I've still got a number of copies of this particular Time Out in the early 80s. So that was the cover for that in full color.
So,
Yeah.
so the way this kind of thing would work here in the states is, like a guy at DC Comics gets paid whatever he gets paid to do pages for DC, and it's very laborious and it's not for that much money. But every now and then, somebody would get that opportunity to do a Rolling Stone cover or something.
Yeah, like the Rolling Stone or something. Yeah.
So, but that would pay so much better. Do you remember that being the same deal with this?
No, I don't think they were particularly well paid.
I see.
I mean, the thing is, the cover of each week's Time Out would be a big sort of cardboard black and white cutout thing. So I was rather pleased to see large sort of billboards of the well, not billboards like the big things, but something about 3 feet high around various newsagents. So I was really chuffed to see that. And I did about five Time Out covers. There was an artist who used to do a lot of Time Out covers called Mick Brownfield, who I've recently got to know, and I loved his Time Out covers. I've got to digress for a little bit. Have you ever heard of the Quatermass series? There was a British TV series in the 50s, and they made it into films called the Quatermass.
I've
The
heard it
Quatermass
mentioned. I've never seen it.
Quatermass and the Pit. And a good many years later, they were doing a new TV series of Quatermass and the Pit, and they had John Mills, the actor, and Mick Brownfield did this illustration of John Mills, done in a very pen and inky kind of style, on the cover of Time Out. And the following issue, he had the face of the alien from the film Alien bursting out of last week's cover in full sort of 3D, three-dimensional airbrushed effect. And it was great. And he'd done a lot of really good covers. So I was rather pleased to be following in his footsteps doing some Time Out covers.
Brian, is this all done on one plane? Is this all done on like one sheet, or are there layers here? Are you painting like Judge Dredd and then putting Frisket on it to do the airbrush? How does that work?
I mean, I put the Frisket on the figures to airbrush the blue background. Yes, and by the way, that is my lettering in that word balloon. It's shit, I must admit. It's not as professional as Tom Frame or somebody, but he wasn't involved in this, so I had to do it myself. And as you can see, I've never been a decent letterer.
It looks like you use rulers on it.
Possibly,
for
yeah.
Straight edges and stuff.
Real struggle, yeah, to do some decent. Completely. I once did a story there's a group called The Residents. So have you heard of The Residents? And they did a CD freak show, and it came with a graphic novel. And I drew one of the stories in it. and I did all the lettering myself, and the the lettering is terrible.
So, Brian, that begs the question: do you know who the residents are?
I do.
That's sexy, man. That's like knowing who Banksy is.
I do.
Would we know who they are?
Well, I would have thought so. I mean, you may have. I mean, I don't know how familiar. I mean, but their representative is Homer Flynn, who is the head of the Cryptic Corporation, and his partner Hardy Fox was also part of it, but he died sadly, and he was recently credited as being the composer for the Residents, but he's no longer with us.
I see.
Yeah.
There's one long lost piece of comics production on almost all of these pages here, and we see it right here on this piece where we see 83%, and often, you know, an artist can choose what size they want to draw something at, you know what the final dimensions are, but it used to be this arcane little tool called, I guess, a proportion wheel or reduction wheel.
Reduction wheel. Yeah.
Reduction wheel, and that's what these percentages are indicative of. You reduce this 83%, and that is the size of your Time Out magazine cover.
I can't actually see it. Is there something in that corner that I can't see? What does it say?
83%.
I can't imagine it would have been me. I mean, I would have just drawn the thing, and they would have then reproduced it, you know, the size they wanted. I wouldn't have known. I don't think I would have known it was 83%.
I see.
To be quite honest, yeah. So that's a puzzle. I don't really know. All of this is full color. I was never really a master of color. Actually, I struggled with color all the way through to the Invisibles with Vertigo. Really.
It's so fascinating to hear that because there is a Brian Bolland palette, and you see it here. There is. I can't describe it, but like I know it when I see your color.
Yeah.
These pieces are so vibrant, and you showed us a couple of pieces in one of our previous interviews, and it was the same deal, just very vibrant.
Yes. Yeah, I showed you the Tank Girl, a couple of Tank Girls, didn't I? And
to hear you say, you know, that color's not your thing or whatever, you must throw up when you look at most modern comics, because these are so superior to most coloring.
Well, I think I said in a previous interview that I'm not really very good with color. When my wife says to me, the person wearing the yellow shirt, God, was somebody wearing a yellow shirt? I just don't notice color at all. I think being comic art for me is about drawing lines. Because in American comics, you know, the artist drew lines basically, and the colorist would then be somebody else, wouldn't they? And they would come and fill in the lines. But gradually, as people like Vertigo required me to come up with fairly sophisticated full color work, my wife worked on some of them with bits of them with me, and but I can't see any there that she did. That looks like it's all me. It looks to me as if that sky behind the Chicken Man, it was kind of swiped on with some tool or other.
I see.
Wasn't it? It was smudged. It was kind of smudged on, wasn't it?
Looks like it.
It's really interesting to go through like these three where you have your clearly airbrush, very smooth background. And then this, you know, has painting, texture, even like maybe that you're dabbing something on with a rag or something, the way that's built.
Yeah, that looks like the rag thing again, doesn't it? Yeah.
And then, you know, yet another approach to the background color. It's really great to see that. Yeah.
Can you see from where you are what material that's done in? Because it looks like I masked everything out very carefully.
On this guy or this guy? On
the right hand, the sky and the right hand one, because it's all done in a kind of, because I'm left-handed, you see, so everything goes from top left to bottom right.
We're seeing
given
marks.
The choice.
We're seeing marks here.
You are, yes. That must have been put on possibly with a rag, or not a rag, a handkerchief or something like that.
I would bet that the yellow was airbrushed on there, because there's the stuff that's not yellow, like, is where the marks are, oranges and things, and it feels like there's a layer of cake up here compared to down here. Yeah, like it's so opaque up here.
Yeah. I wish I could tell you, but haven't got it in front of me. So, and
there's so much precision required too, man, in the pinstripes.
Yeah. I mean, think about pinstripes. I remember a friend of mine was really amused with me because whenever I drew Zatanna, I was always very interested to try to get the fishnets on her legs going in the right direction. And for a while I was getting it wrong, and I realized after a while why I was getting it wrong. But there was one picture where she was crouching, and I had to work out how fishnet stockings would go when a person is kneeling. And, and I didn't have anybody to model for me, so I had to work it out. But occasionally, it's a convention in comics that even though somebody might be wearing a pinstripe suit, you just draw parallel lines, basically.
Yeah, right. Yeah, that kind of
it's just something that's kind of forgiven. Every it's an affectation of comics that occasionally you just draw, even though their knees are bent or their arms are bent, you just draw parallel lines because
guilty as charged.
Absolutely. Now that was was Gary Groth in charge of Amazing Heroes? It was a Fantagraphics fanzine, wasn't it?
If he wasn't, Kim Thompson was.
Yes, it would have been. Yeah, and it was the European, the British invasion. Really, I don't know whether it was a European invasion, was it?
It shows to show like the. It's all Europe to us, man.
Yeah. Although over here we've just voted to be out of Europe, so
that's true.
God, yeah, not me. Oh, a political statement there. I should say out of that.
We have a self-portrait of Uncle Brian here with a residence pin, by the way.
That's when I wasn't wearing the white beard that I currently. Yes, a residence pin. I've sneaked all sorts of things into my work, all sorts of references. I'm a big fan of the group Ween, and I've occasionally drawn the Ween logo, especially on Tank Girl covers. But yeah, there's a residence pin there. Ooh,
the Titan Eagle years.
Oh God, all those crappy little pencil roughs.
And that's what that is. That's just to show the editors a direction.
Yes. Before every cover, I have to show them what my idea, and I tend to come up with the idea. Well, sometimes they specify something they want, but I often just do a rough on spec, and so I used to do like 3, and then I think I may have said before that they always used to choose my least favorite of the 3. So eventually I cut it down to 1.
It's incredible how that works.
It always goes that way. And then it lets you know like why they're the editors and you're the artist, because taste, you can't go to school and learn taste.
I remember reading a Paul Rand book, and he would talk about doing one proposal. Like you don't get choices.
Like when he did like the cover for, the logo for Next Computer for Steve Jobs, you give me $150,000 and I provide you a logo. There's no talking about it.
Yes.
Brian, how big would these be? Did you work a standard size?
Well, we have a thing here called A4. They are the A sizes. You get paper in A4, which is about 11 inches high, I would say, by say 8. Mm-hmm. Now the thing about that, I can't remember the actual figures, but the clever thing about the A sizes is that if you were to flip that page, so there were 2 of them, that the proportion would still be exactly the same, but
yeah,
as you flip it over and double it in size, the proportion going that way remains the same ratio.
Right.
So we have A5, which
it's such a nice feature.
It really is,
because we don't get it with our 8.5 by 11.
No, we don't.
No,
we always had to do things difficult here.
Oh, really? Well, we are somewhere between metric and imperial over in this country. We still drive in miles, and we still fill our gas tanks with full of gallons. Although I think on the pump actually that's not true. I'm lying. I think
not liters?
It does say liters now, I think.
How about inches?
But Yeah, we still use inch. Well, I still use inches and feet, but my son, probably being 26, only thinks in metric. And of course, we have Celsius in temperatures, which makes sense to me because when it's 0, it's freezing.
Of course,
which is very convenient.
The metric all makes sense to me. Like I'm just going by what we were taught because they're telling me to. But the metric is very, very sensible. Celsius is very, very sensible.
I think it's a sinister commie plot myself.
Oh my!
What have we got here?
we got the rough for the first cover, and then the final piece.
Yes, that's right. Yes, yeah.
So that rough is pretty tight. Would that be autograph projected, or are you just gridding or eyeballing?
No, I will be autograph projecting by then because this is well into the 80s, and I think I would have bought myself the autograph book by now because it's pretty much the same drawing, isn't it? Yeah.
Now I remember this cover getting the mechanical color treatment, like with Ben-A dots and all that. Like whenever it's printed, I wonder what these registration dots are for.
Well, I would imagine it's so that I don't know quite. I would imagine it's so that the color would have been put on by some means that I didn't know.
Right.
Possibly blue line or no, it couldn't have been blue line.
It was a mechanical process with the dots, but I guess when those layers go on, you want to make sure that they're reasonably aligned.
It was such a striking cover, to launch a series with, to really launch a character to a new audience.
It was, wasn't it? Yeah.
Plus they did the right thing, and every story was a Brian Bolland story too.
Yeah, it didn't hurt.
Well, it started with my stuff, didn't it? Yes, it did.
They bounced around too, from what I remember. We got to revisit. We did an episode on that issue, and it wasn't like a sequential amount of like progs. It was like we'll grab this one from this year, this one from that year, and.
Yeah, I will say that Nick Landor, Mike Lake, and Mike Luckman jointly. I better get this right, but Nick Landor opened Forbidden Planet in '78, and then he moved into publishing with Titan Books, and the very first Titan book was all me. I did a new cover, and it was all my stuff, and it had these extra pages like the one with the rats that I showed you down here, and it was all put together on the floor of my flat. So the very first Titan book was my stuff and paginated with Nick and me on the floor of my flat in London, and he then went on to make an empire out of Eagle Comics and Titan Book. I mean, Eagle Comics only lasted a short while, I think. Yeah. But Titan Books are now still going. Yeah, aren't they?
Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I was, this is a publisher that I might have the entire bibliography of every issue of all of Eagle Comics, but I don't know much about the behind-the-scenes players.
This was always one of my favorite covers, and I would look at it on Comic Art Fans forever.
They
had it on there, and I remember when this was announced, and it was like, man, I hope that cover's in there.
I don't remember the. Sorry, I'm shouting. I don't remember the story that inside that one. I think a lot of the time you keep these comics in plastic bags, and consequently you tend to just look at the front and you don't look on the inside. So I can't remember.
This is my first issue that I bought as a kid.
Oh right, yeah. I think I did a few versions of that in rough prelim form, but that was Satanas, wasn't it?
Could not believe.
Come quiet. What's he saying?
This is your last chance to surrender, man. See. Of course.
And he's trying to arrest the plant in the previous one, isn't he?
See, this very much feels like the Forbidden Planet kind of composition.
It does. It's very much. I do a lot of kind of posed photos of people just kind of sitting, looking at the viewer, but I love the way the lead character is on the floor in the bottom right-hand corner.
Oh yeah. And look at the attention paid to those ropes.
Yeah. I did a newly coloured version of that myself. I was quite pleased with that cover, and I coloured it myself in Photoshop for a poster. And so I still have a sort of a large-ish print of that, which I've got. I sell at conventions occasionally.
These Eagle Comics, these are my sweet spot. These are how I discovered your work, Brian. And then I remember like through the grapevine, because I had nobody to talk to about comics growing up. Like Jim is the first guy I had to talk comics with, and I was 21 years old. When I heard that, like, yeah, that Brian Bolland guy, he drew a whole comic called Batman Killing Joke. Like, I couldn't believe that there would be a whole issue of something original with this level of craft in there. Oh, there's the Satanist things.
Oh, there's Satanist again. Yes, I knew I'd drawn. Oh my God, 4 other versions. 5. Is that him at the bottom?
Yeah, that's 5 of them.
Oh wow. Yeah, so I must.
That's
have,
a good one.
That one's so phallic looking.
That would have done. And there's
that's a classic.
Oh yes, that one. Yeah, I did I was repeating ideas on my DC covers. So I think one of my Camelot covers, number 10, I think, was very much like that. It was completely side-on view of King Arthur and some of the others kind of being shot at, and it was all side view on.
You said the magic word, Brian, Camelot 3000. Do you think that in the future you could join us and talk some Camelot?
Yeah, if you've not had enough of me by now.
Impossible. How about the lighting on that right there?
It's amazing. All of these covers are so impressive to me because of the amount of like energy and the scale they feel like they feel bigger than the cover.
Totally.
It's great. And that eye, like as a point of interest, we talked about Alex Toth earlier, and I always think about him doing demos on like how you create a point of interest, and that eye is such that point of interest, that round spot in the middle of the darkness.
Yeah.
Very striking.
I'm wondering whether I would have posed for the hands. I mean, those hands are lit fairly drastically, aren't they?
Yeah,
I don't remember posing for that, but
great knuckles.
Yes,
good knuckles. I like a good knuckle.
Yeah, and the inking approach creates a very, like, I know this texture. It's a very tactile texture, and it's all done through the kind of noodling.
Yes, I try. I've got a tendency to be a little bit too technical drawing-y about my inking. Some of the time, my inking is very a sort of kind of parallel. The lines are. But I always admired. We covered Neil Adams. I always admired the anarchic inking style of Adams, and I try to remember to do scruffy lines every once in a while.
One of the places where you did it well was in the it was the Eagle cover that was the big tank coming down on
Oh yes, I remember that one. Is that in this book?
I don't know. No, if it is, we're getting there, because it's like the Carlos Esquerra issues.
Yeah, I think I spent a long time just scratching back and forth with a pen for that. Now that's that cover I was talking about, the Block Wars, where they're all kind of falling to their deaths, but meanwhile they're all shooting each other.
It's so good, man.
Yeah, it's not a particularly conventional-looking composition, is it? Really, but it works, I think. Yeah,
and what's again?
On the right is pretty much a repeat of that panel from the rain story we looked at earlier.
Yeah, this is what we talked about earlier. Where I'm like, and then he chose to do that on the cover. Like,
it's incredible. At all of that. This is another one that's very evocative, like an EC cover. Sure. To me, like one of the war comics or something.
Even shock suspense stories, man. Yeah. Let's go on a fishing trip, Jimmy. I just took out some insurance on you. Here it is.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Oh yeah.
Both of these, and what always struck me is, both of these have the Carlos Esquerra almost exclusive on the interior, and Carlos uses these kinds of marks. They're almost crumb-like.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
Oh, yes, I know what you're saying.
So it's like you were kind of channeling him a little bit with this kind of, because you don't use these marks very often.
No, you're right.
Look at this thing.
And of course, the idea of Russian tanks rolling over something is just unthinkable, really, isn't it?
Yeah, right. I keep staring. It looks like an etching.
Yeah, it really does.
Just beautiful.
That isn't. There's a foot in that one, isn't there, sticking out of the rubble?
Yeah.
You pointed out in the Killing Joke that there was a foot sticking out of the dirt.
You're developing a motif.
I believe the French call it a leitmotif.
But I think that one's an actual person there, isn't it? Now that's a cover on the left where I just didn't have an idea, so I just drew a face basically.
It worked well enough to become the back end papers for this thing, I believe.
Does it?
I think
I
so.
think it does.
Look at the
And
little
there's
like rim lighting, the secondary lighting on there,
oh yes, yeah, that's right.
creating those planes. You feel the curve of that skin of that face right there.
I love the
Yeah,
contrast between the hatched lines, on the skin doing flesh,
yeah,
and then like underneath the eagle beak is a totally different line.
yeah,
Yeah, often like this kind of, it's like a 5 o'clock shadow kind of
yeah, yeah.
hatching.
Now, on the right is one of those occasions where I repeat the same cover again, but in a different context.
Yeah, genius.
I did that. I did that with some Animal Man covers. I actually pretty much repeated that cover on an Animal Man on one occasion.
Did they ever put a book together? Like we got this Dave McKean book that has all the Sandman covers. Did they ever do that with your Animal Man stuff, or just
No,
no?
no. I mean, there are. I mean, there is a DC cover book. A collection of a lot of my covers, but I really can't remember what was included in that. I've got it over there somewhere, but I haven't looked at it for a while.
Yeah, that might
Could be in
be
there.
this Kayfabe effect video book that I grab off of eBay before we release this video to the wild. I remember this cover.
Oh yes, that was an idea that I eventually did in full color in Photoshop, and it's a finished color cover, and I sent it to them, and neither it was never used. And I remember speaking to them at 2000 AD and saying, "Did you ever use that cover?" And they still never have. And I made a large size print of that as well in full color, which I sell at conventions occasionally.
Oh my goodness.
Have you seen The Last of Us, the Last of Us, the TV show?
I haven't.
No.
Oh, it's good. It's very good. It's all about some kind of fungal infection, which is taking over. Pretty much, it has wrecked the human population of the Earth. It's pretty good, and it's this kind of fungus that's growing out of people's faces. I think I ought to take a cut.
did just going by that comics interview cover with the Brian Bolland self portrait
Yeah.
before, did this start with a Bolland self portrait and grow into
No, that is a completely made up face.
amazing?
Wow.
It's
Yeah,
stuff like
I don't
these
think-
eyes. It's just
Yeah.
it's uncanny.
It's another one of those like that perfect circle in there, the white field, and then you've got your black circle.
Yeah.
It's just such a draw. And especially
do
on
have a-
something
I
like
do-
this with all your round mushrooms, and it's that eyeball that you go to.
Yeah.
So are those mushrooms? They're hand drawn. I'm not using some kind of ellipse. Now
Not at all.
the thing is, one of my tricks is that I do like the characters on covers to be looking at the viewer. I think when you look at a cover and the cover is looking back at you, or the person in the cover is looking back at you, I think there's more of a connection. You think, oh, I want to learn more about this character.
I did
That's
that
just something.
with all of the Street Angel
Yeah.
hardcovers when I went with Image, and that was my same thought. As you're scanning the the wall of comics, this one is going to be looking right at you. It's like you're going to make
Yeah.
eye contact as you're looking around.
There is this thing, isn't there, where people say the eyes follow you around the room, and of course they do, don't they? If you've got a painting and the person in the painting is looking straight at the viewer, then wherever you are in the room, that figure is going to follow you around the room.
Are there any special tricks for getting such accurate perspective lines?
I do remember doing that, and I think that's where my technical drawing obsessiveness came into it. There are ways of. I mean, that's an occasion surely where I just painted the black bits. Isn't
Yeah.
it? I can't see any whiteout on there, can you?
No, not at all.
And I think I would have used that sort of taping the end of the ruler to the page and then just moving it. And I can't remember how I got it so exact, really, but I was pretty keen to do that.
It's just so amazing, like especially when you have such a grid of stuff.
Yeah.
If something's off 1 millimeter, your eye just naturally can see that the gray value is a little different in that one spot, and it's just not that way. It's so tight.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can do that in Photoshop now because I can just move something 10 pixels,
Right.
you know. So
Totally.
if you have the pen tool and you have a point there and a point there, and it draws a line between the two, if you just select one of the points, you can just press the up and down keys on the keyboard and it will move it 10 pixels for you. So you can make things very useful. Now, that's the cover I drew. That's the very last one I drew for Nick Landor at Eagle, as he called himself, which and then Des Skinner Quality had taken it over. They made a deal of some description with IPC or whoever they were at the time, and that cover was the last one I did for them. Didn't do anymore.
Fantastic
It's
image.
very funny.
Which is a shame because I was really enjoying them, and there was lots more good material to borrow from. Oh, there's DR and Quench.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Boom. This piece makes me so happy because we get to see a Strontium Dog
Yes.
from Uncle Brian and any number of judges. Some more
Yes.
DR and Quench characters.
There's a guy there with an arm growing out of his head. The Gronk is down there on the left, sort of just in front of the girl with the single hair sort of growing out of her foread. Yeah, the Gronk.
Oh yeah, there's the arm guy.
There's the arm guy, yes. And,
That's amazing.
Because a lot of characters there that got. I did a newer version of that cover with a lot of new characters on in full color. Because I've continued to do covers occasionally. I did one recently for their 45th anniversary issue, which I think is up there somewhere.
Another strong set. Look at this thing. This is a thing of nightmares.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've no idea where those ideas came from, but we've got DR and Quench. I really like DR and Quench, and so it was a treat to just draw them on the cover. There he is, covered in spiders.
Yo, so awesome, and the lighting. You know, like you got these legs coming off, but you still see all this accurate lighting in between. You never get lost.
Not a terribly good Adolf Hitler, though. It doesn't really look like him.
You don't need too much to get it right. Like there's nobody who's going to confuse him with anybody else.
Yeah, that's true.
Oh no, he's got the trademark mustache, hasn't he?
I just can't get over this because there's something like childlike about it, but then to see it like
it does feel like something a kid would draw, and then this is like the let me do the real drawing of it.
Right.
It's very Carlos. I'm sure it would have been a Carlos creature.
Yeah.
I can't imagine I would have made that up. Oh God.
A little
there's
call out to
DC.
DC.
Now you do know what that is a swipe from, don't you?
Yeah, it's a flash.
Mm-hmm.
It's Showcase number 4 from 1950. Is it 6 or 7? I can never get it right. But it was some say it was the very first. It was the beginning of the Silver Age,
right.
Wasn't it? When superheroes were brought back from the dead, really, in 1950, whatever it was.
Let's get to the early years.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Now this is some really, really early stuff. This is probably before I'd really settled into Judge Dredd.
And these Future Shocks are shorter strips for 2000 AD. So was that you were new to this enterprise, or was it a speed issue? Like we could.
No, I was new. It was pretty new. I think that was before I even did my first Judge Dredd. I think we're moving into early stuff now, aren't we? Oh, we're moving into Walter the Wobot. Now that guy top left, that looks like a swipe from a real person, doesn't it? The guy who's got the other fellow.
Oh, this guy right here.
That guy there, it looks like a real person, but I don't know whether I might have found a face like that and pinched it from. There you go.
It's a good face.
I couldn't say.
Had to get a lot of story in on these comics. A lot of
pages. I used to be able to do one of those a day. I mean, not every day, but they were weekly. But I could. I was living in Chiswick, which is a part of West London, not far from the Thames, and I do remember sitting in a room drawing those sometimes in a day.
Great lettering and perspective.
Yeah, I was looking at those. You're not giving yourself any easy things to draw here.
Never does.
No shortcuts.
It's the big lesson.
I do have most of that artwork here, by the way. All these Walter the Wobots. I supplied those myself. because they're not very saleable. I've not really had anybody offering to buy them off me.
Oh, you will now. You're going to be getting some Facebook messages after this video goes live.
Okay, well, let's have the offers coming my way then, please. I think I was doing some very cheeky. There's Adolf again on the right. That dates me talking about that sort of stuff. And we haven't had the Don Martin character crop up yet, have we? Yeah, I mean, that's quite early, because the Judge Dredd in the bottom left-hand corner, he still had that round-shaped helmet,
right,
and the round-shaped eyes as well. So it must have been quite early there. It must have been, yeah.
Such a point in time, but too, man, where pirate radio is a thing. Long gone. Oh, there's Don Martin.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, there's Festa Besta Tester from Don Martin, yes. And there's a kind of a Hunchback again character. I loved Don Martin's cartoons, so it was an affectionate swipe out.
Oh yeah, that's clear on the page for sure.
Yeah.
Feels like early use of that texture, that
rag.
Is that what
texture?
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
It's neat to see some of those things that you would do, years later, or continuing through your career, seeing some of that stuff on these early pages.
One of those credit stickers came off recently. I've got it lying around here somewhere, but I can't find it.
Like, I've always known 2000 AD to have the credit boxes and things, but like, what was the idea of the art bodger or something that Kevin O'Neill did? Like, what was that? They talk about it.
I think we were art droids, weren't we? Well, I'll tell you exactly what. I mean, it's worth checking out a really lengthy interview with Kevin. Kevin was we were all pals. We sort of used to go to the pub once a month together. Dave, Kevin, Mick, and me, and I knew him as one of my friends, and I never really knew the extent of Kevin's work and how great it was. But the thing I didn't really appreciate at the time was that all through up till the time of 2000 AD, not only did IPC not return artwork, but they also didn't credit any of the artists. But when I don't know whether DC and Marvel were crediting people in 1977, but when Kevin was working in the art department of 2000 AD, he talked somebody, and I can't remember the name. He did say who it was, into putting these stickers on where he called us all art droids. And even the members of the editorial staff, he had sort of robot versions of them. So now this is a really early thing. There was a comic called Action.
Yeah.
Pat Mills was involved with Action, which was a fairly controversial comic because it had a very bloodthirsty shark.
Hookjaw.
Was he called? Hookjaw, yes. And it came under a lot of criticism because it was quite graphic, and that was in Action. And I think this was probably my first, or pretty much my first interior job for IPC was this.
This future sports stuff is funny because that shows up in 2000 AD early on too. With I think it's the Dave Gibbons stuff. Harlem Heroes is like some kind of weird.
Yes, well, Harlem Heroes was in the first issue of 2000 AD, wasn't it? I mean, it was in number 1,
right?
Prog 1 with Harlem Heroes.
Yeah.
I mean, we'd been just doing Powerman, which was a black Superman basically, and I think they thought Dave would be perfect for Harlem Heroes, which was like the Harlem Globetrotters, wasn't it?
Boy, and making you do these bikes early on too.
Right.
Yeah. This was based on a film, wasn't it? Was this called Spinball, or is this strip called Spinball?
There was Rollerball.
Rollerball. That was Rollerball. Were they on motorbikes?
I don't think they were on motorbikes, but there was some motorization. It was kind of
yeah.
What's the roller derby combined with spiked gloves and things of that nature. James Caan, I think, was in that.
Yeah, I think this was because a lot of the ideas we had in these comics, but somebody had seen a film, and they thought, oh, let's. I mean, the whole of 2000 AD really came along because there had been Star Wars. back in the 50s, there was a science fiction comic called Eagle with Dan Dare, beautifully drawn, some of it, and but it had fizzled out in the 60s, and science fiction just wasn't selling. And then suddenly Star Wars came along, and they thought maybe we should do a sci-fi comic, and that's why 2000 AD came along. And another comic that I read as a boy, when I was 14 or so, was Valiant, containing, we've discussed this before, the Steel Claw, drawn by Jesus Flasco, as I call him, and written by Tom Tully, I think, was it?
So was Valiant still coming out? Like this is a printed cover for Valiant?
It may have halted for a bit, and it may have been one of those occasions when they had brought it back. That was just a summer special. I don't think it was coming out on a weekly basis the way it was when I was a kid. They bring these things back temporarily, and they don't last very long. And there's that end paper you talked about.
Look at the size of that thing.
My God, it's big, isn't it? I've just seen your tiny hands.
Yeah, like, look, he's eating my whole hand.
Yeah.
What a book. Did you ever think you would get books this big in your own house? Like, this is like reference material at the Library of Congress or something.
It's not just your former president that has very tiny hands, is it? It's you as well.
Amazing, Brian. Thank you so much for joining us to go through.
Well, it's been a great pleasure. It's always fun talking to you, and as I can talk about myself endlessly.
See, you said that, and we held you to that this time. And,
yeah, I know.
And Camelot 3000 is on the mind now, man. So next time, like maybe we can reconvene at a later date.
By the way, I have to plug this. You see, this is my other project, which is The Actress and the Bishop, and this is currently out at the moment. It's all me from cover to cover. So check that out, sports fans.
Actress and the Bishop. Go to your local comic shop. Go on Amazon, whatever's convenient. Scoop up this book. Brian's memoir is coming out. What's the title of your memoir so people can Google that?
It is called. I've lost it. Oh, here it is. There it is. That's the cover. You can see the title of it there. It's About Time. I think there have been a number of things called It's About Time. There was a film called About Time, but as you can see, the two letters at the end are a different color. But and so that's the front cover and the spine of this thing. And it comes in a box. You can buy the special edition in a kind of a box that's completely different. With a few extra bits, and I think that's going to be out in March.
Amazing. Hopefully. Fantastic. Thank you so much. And I encourage everybody to follow Brian Bolland's Instagram, where he's putting out a little bit.
Oh yeah, whenever I find something I haven't seen for a while, or somebody finds something, I tend to put it on Instagram, and I'm on Facebook. There is a Brian Bolland Appreciation Society page on Facebook, and I go on it occasionally to annoy people, and
they're not allowed to continue being in that group if they don't watch these videos.
Yes,
absolutely. No, you're disqualified. Don't watch these. Everybody, and I shall plug these videos. Somebody was saying that you are the go-to commentators on comics these days. You do it all the time, don't you?
We do consider ourselves the greatest modern.
That's what I say.
Yeah, totally.
No.
And we may have paid them to butter you up so that you would join us on this glorious Sunday, I believe, is when we're going to put this video out.
Okay.
So, Brian, thank you so much. I know it's getting really late there. You're so gracious and generous with your time. Much appreciated. Everybody go buy the books, Actress and the Bishop. Grab the memoir book. Follow Brian Bolland on Instagram. Thank you so much, and have a nice night.
Goodbye to you.